So I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience of going to see of the Newport first annual Earth Day Film Festival. Because for me, quite a lot was brought up around this in terms of my own experience of having grown up in Australia and that relationship with the Indigenous population, and then moving to New Zealand for quite a number of years, and then working in public health there and getting trained in the framework within they work to relate to the Indigenous people there. And then coming here where I don't really have much context because I spent most of my time just at the Abbey. So it was really helpful for me to go and have this cultural experience and put in context the land on which I'm now choosing to call my home. So I wanted to talk about the concept of turanga waiwai. And this is a Māori term, Māori being the Indigenous people of New Zealand. And it's one of the most well-known Māori concepts. And turanga is literally standing place, and waiwai is feet. So it means the place in which you stand. It's your foundation of self-confidence and belonging that you navigate the world with. And so it has many levels. So at the first level, they often talk about the marae, the meeting house, being your source of turanga waiwai. So it's where you grow up, you learn your cultural practices, you hear your elders, you learn your spiritual practices, and there's a really big sense of belonging there. And it's kind of guiding you in the framework of your identity as being a Māori person, but also how to navigate the whole world. But it also goes deeper than that. And there's when you introduce yourself as in New Zealand or in a formal setting, according to the Māori tradition, you give your mihi, where you place yourself in a context. So you, in one tribe, the Ngāti Porou tribe, they say, Hikorangi is my mountain, Waiapu is the river, Ngāti Porou is the tribe. So you ground yourself in, this is my mountain, this is my river, this is my people, this is what I bring to you when I meet you. And so, especially in public health, where we're working that framework, we learn as much Māori as we can, and we introduce ourselves that way. But it goes deeper in that, because the external framework reflects your inner framework in terms of where you feel self-confident and belonging externally reflects your inner sense of self-confidence and belonging and, self-confidence mainly. So all this kind of came up to my mind when I was watching the movie United by Water, where several tribes of the Upper Columbia River tribes had the project of each receiving a big tree that had been felled, one of the old forest trees, that they chose to make into a canoe. So then they had a year-long journey where each tribe was together working to use traditional methods to make this into a canoe. And then they would all come from their different directions and travel to meet in one place, Kettle Falls, which is historically significant in that it was ancestral fishing grounds. But in 1940, what happened is that for the Grand Coulee Dam, it was flooded. And so they showed this quite moving old footage of in 1940 this 3-day ceremony called the Ceremony of Tears, where the elders just mourned the loss of their land, of their cultural practices, of their sense of belonging to that place and their right to have that sense of belonging to that place. So then that year-long journey to come back in 2016, so it's very recent, to come back to all meet in that historical place seemed to be quite spiritually healing. And this was reminiscent to me of a project that I studied in my public health training where one of the New Zealand tribes, they had public health workers and community development workers work them on a waka building project. So waka is the Māori word for canoe. So they had the young people and the elders all working to learn how to make a waka, how to ride it, and other spiritual practices. And through that, they saw that the sense of belonging, the self-confidence, the cohesion in that community really grew. And so you could say that they had regained some aspect of their Turanga Waiwai, having confidence in their place to stand in this world, regaining some sense of their identity as Māori people, or Native Americans in the case of this movie, confidence and respect for their traditional practices, respecting connection with the elders that they might not otherwise relate to on a daily basis, because some of them were working on this project daily, it seemed, and feeling connected with the marae and with the land that was traditionally, that is theirs. So from a public health perspective, that's great. Because they have, psychosocial, spiritual well-being, and then they can relate to the world in a meaningful manner. So after watching this movie and kind of having all these frameworks and ideas come up in my mind, the question arose, what is it I'm standing on? And on what foundation do I base my self-confidence on? Where does my sense of belonging, connection with all other sentient beings, and this land in which we live arise? And I think when I thought about this, it kind of came down to, what am I carving my identity around? And I think these questions quite quickly arise when you move to a monastery and you start to undergo training, and then you take ordination, and you gradually and willingly strip away the identity that you've come with. You no longer have your job that you used to do, so you can't carve your identity around the roles or the functions that you used to do. You shave off your hair, you give up adornments, and you wear formless clothes day in, day out. So any identity of being an attractive sexual object that you will gain attention for, or be praised on the basis of that, is you're not going to have too much room to move. And you change your name, which is really closing the door on this previous identity that you used to identify as me. So what is the ground on which we stand, and the foundation that we feel empowered and connected from? And so what I come to is that this is our Buddha nature, our potential to transform into magnificence and become fully awakened Buddhas so that we can benefit others in the most wonderful way. This is the only reliable thing that we can hold on to, and that can be a true source of happiness for ourselves and others. But then this Buddha nature isn't something solid that we can hold on to, like it's this identifiable piece of our brain that we can say, this is my Buddha nature. And it's also not, and I just came up with these analogies. I was sitting out on the grass, just lying down a couple of days ago, feeling so supported and embraced. It's not like this big piece of land either that we can feel grounded upon. Rather, our Buddha nature is a lack of inherent existence of our mind, the fact that we're not some solid, unchanging entity, but rather we're changing moment by moment, which is great because it means that we can eliminate all the afflictions in our mind and develop all our good qualities endlessly. So this foundation is a complete embrace of impermanence, of change, and a letting go of the appearances of just this life. And as I've heard Venerable Chödrön repeatedly say, that when situations where we feel the rugs being tugged out under our feet, and we feel like we're in free fall, it's like, well, we're always in free fall. We just don't recognize it because we're clinging so tightly to the appearances so strong that we can't see the momentary change that's going on. And so what struck me from watching these two movies at the Earth Day Festival, the first one was a shorter one about the caribou in the Pacific Northwest and the effort to protect them, the remaining 3 that are right in our region here, is the benefits of looking beyond just this life. Because I strongly believe that we should do all that we can to protect the environment we're in for future generations and live in harmony with the ecosystem and do efforts to protect endangered species. And also to have a sound grounding in our relationship to the people and the culture that we live in. But we can do this from a framework where we're clinging too tightly to the appearances of this life. And when we do that, it's a source of misery. Because when we grasp too tightly at the beauties of this life and our work to preserve it, to the point where it's interfering with our spiritual practice, then that's really forgetting our situation of endlessly cycling in samsara, and to forget the main job is to transform our mind. And when we cling too tightly to our family, to our identity as a particular ethnic group, to our race, to a sexual orientation, political or activist group, it also belies the fact that the relationships that we have in this life are just like the coming together of leaves that will just be blown away in the next moment, scattered far away from each other. So that's not to say that we become apathetic to our relationships or our culture, which would be going into the other extreme, but just that our identification with the labels that we're working within isn't so tight, so that we can kind of come back to the reference point that we're relating to sentient beings on the level of they just want happiness, they don't want suffering, and we all have the potential for Buddhahood. And I thought that the Dalai Lama gives us a really beautiful visualization of this, because he's such a strong, ongoing advocate for this situation in Tibet. But at the same time, he's made himself available to all sentient beings, no matter what country they're from, no matter whether they're Buddhist practitioners or not. And he repeatedly emphasizes, when I meet others, I just greet them as a long-term friend. And so I think that to come to the place, to even aspire to have that similar framework as his, I must cultivate my sense of identity around and immerse my self-confidence in the idea of my own and others' potential for full awakening. And so by doing that, I can feel empowered on the fact that we have this shared potential, and I can feel connected to us by that shared potential, and then work from that foundation of self-confidence to actually achieve that. So it was a really interesting cultural experience to go to this movie and learn about the indigenous tribes in America, and to also grasp my own process of how I'm integrating the Buddhist framework into all the other stuff that I've brought here and before I really started to practice the Dharma. So I found it helpful to be reminded of this concept of Turanga Waiwai, our place to stand and act in this world, and to see its importance, at least in my mind, that to utilize this amazing potential that we have as human beings, we must have this firm foundation of self-confidence so that we feel empowered to act in the world. And we can do that within the framework of this life. And I could quite easily, living here, identify my mountain, my river, and see the Sravasti Abbey monastics as my tribe. But within the Buddhist framework, we're trying to look beyond that. And it really impressed upon my mind when Venerable Dhamma said recently, like, even here, the Abbey will soon be like scattered leaves, even within a few decades as we die and progress on to the next life. So maybe be able to relax and enjoy the free fall that we're in. And may our Turanga Waiwai, our self-confidence and place to act in this world, be rested upon our embrace of our own and others' Buddha nature, and really embrace that impermanence and emptiness of inherent existence of our mind. And then from there, maybe be able to work self-confidently to create the causes for our own and others' awakening.